So we are going to talk about appointment setting today. Know that it's a trouble spot for a lot of people. It can be a little difficult, a little tricky managing it. So with a show of hands, how many of you have appointment setters? Good. How many of you are looking for appointment setters? How many of you are in charge of coaching those appointment setters? So if you answered yes to any of these, you are definitely in the right spot. This is where you want to be. I'm going to try to walk you through some of it. So, who the heck am I and why should you listen to me? So, I've been with Robin almost 2 years. My first role was her appointment setter. Now, I'm her team lead. And then after that, she moved me up to call center manager all within a year. So I personally booked over 400 appointments for her in 7 months. 350 of those appointments sat, and a pretty good show rate. I have overseen over 1,200 booked appointments since I became a manager. And now prior to this, I was running a team for General Motors. I did all of their lemon law buybacks. It was a difficult job. I dealt with a lot of angry people. In turn, I had a lot of angry staff. And when I'm not managing the team, I have these 2 beautiful, sassy little girls as mine, and that definitely keep me on my toes. So, guys, what I wanted to do is What I wanted to do was break down and give you guys 3 really simple things that you would be able to do kind of on a rinse and repeat to try to help you guys with your appointment setters. So this is the path that I follow. This is how I train my team. This is how I coach my team. And the first thing I always do is review. So doing just one of these 3, review, spot check, and coach, it's not going to give you the full picture. It might give you a little bits and pieces. So if I review some things, I might know, oh, okay, one of my team members isn't doing so great. It's not really what I really need to find. If I'm just spot checking, I could probably find some issues, but it's not going to give me the whole broad picture of what's really going on. And then coaching, if you're just coaching without knowing why you're coaching, it's not going to do you any damn good. So just doing nothing. So how do you know and how can you tell that your appointment setters are not doing well? Anyone know? Reporting. It's not always everyone's favorite, but let me premise a couple things. So I have talked with Jeanette at the MAP team. So any of you who have MAP with a Sherpa, I have gone to them, I've talked to them about what I was doing here and kind of told them that you guys might come to them and say, hey, I need some of this. They're going to be rolling out a new sales reporting, but it's going to come in a couple months. So just know that there's bigger, better things coming for you guys, but your Sherpa will be able to help you with some of the stuff that we're talking about today. So in reporting, what I sat down and thought was, okay, what do I need to report on? What do I need to find? And the things that I want to look at are how many times have they reached a decision maker? Because yeah, great, phone calls are fantastic, but if you're never reaching a decision maker, phone calls aren't doing anything for you. Are those calls, how are they being dispositioned? Are they reaching decision makers? Are they doing voicemails? Are they not interested? Can they not get past the gatekeeper? What is the booked ratio? So as you saw, I booked 400 appointments and I sat 350 of them. My sit rate's pretty great. I have to make sure I carry that into my appointment setters. So I want to know what their sit rate is. I also want to know how many did they book, what kind of notes are they leaving, because that gets really important to my team. If it's not in keep, it didn't happen. I don't care if they sent everything they were supposed to send. They didn't put it in there, it didn't happen. What type of campaign are they doing? So this makes a huge difference. You guys know lists matter. So we can dig in and we can find, okay, this boot camp list, this is great for accelerators and producers. We're getting hold of them, getting them to come to boot camp, or somebody called a webinar and now we're following up on it. This is a super great list. Or maybe it's godfathers that we're calling. So they're pretty cold, and maybe it's an off-white list, so maybe we're not reaching out to the right people. But all of this stuff we need to make sure that we can track and document. It's going to help later on. And then for some of you guys, smaller companies, you're going to want to find out what's the outcome of the sale. Because if they're setting a lot of appointments for you, but they're not qualified, do you really want those appointments? So this is kind of a good way to set in place and make sure that you have that. Now, one of the biggest things with reporting is you have to be able to trust the reports. So what I do is I use TurboDial, and it imports and works with Keep. Sorry, I almost said the old one. So everything is integrated. We have it all backed up. Me and Scott, who is my Keep genius, I just go to him and say, hey, this is what I want. Make it happen. And he makes it happen for me. So we spent months verifying all the information, going back over everything that we had done, making sure that all the reports match in all the different places, which I'm not going to lie was a tedious task. And some days I wanted to pull out my hair. I think my team also wanted to pull out my hair because they were sick of me. I also continue to do this. So I review with my team every morning and once a week. So every morning we meet in my office at 7:30 on the button. They're all there, smiling faces, not really. And we go over what happened the day before. We look at all of the information. We look at all of their dials. If David tells me I dialed 100 dials, and I see in Keep, it tells me he dialed 40 dials, I'm going to ask him what he really did. But then if he says that he really dialed 100 dials and he was counting it, well, then I know I have a problem within Keep and something isn't reporting correctly. So it allows me to fix any issues that we have immediately versus waiting for a month or letting a whole list completely fall off, and now all these leads are just off in la la land. So I have them self-report. Looks like a whole big sheet here, but it's really super simple. I have them report on, so this is David's sheet. So you can see his initials over there. I have the date that he called. I have the first time calls. I want to know how many of these dials were unique. Then the total number of dials. And then I want to know again, how many times did he talk to someone for the first time? Now, the way that I can tell all this and back it all up is because I have all this stuff set up through TurboDial. So they are able to disposition everything through TurboDial, and I can take a peek, and it gives me all of this in a report, which I'll show you in a minute. And then any follow-up conversations they had with decision makers. If we happen to be doing a webinar, did they book any? If the webinar happened, did they sit any of those? Same thing with consults booked and consults sat. So if you take a look at the bottom line where it says monthly total, those are really the numbers that I pay attention to. I see that David dialed 399 dials for the month. Now, granted, he's on a multiple campaign, so this just happens to be one of them that he was doing. And then I can see that he talked to 16 people. So if you're looking over here at pitch to unique, he's pitching 11%. Not great, not terrible. He is sitting 56%. Now, if you see these notes over here, I want to see, okay, why is there zeros for this whole day? Was he out? So he was out half day. And then I had them doing some trials for me. So these extra dials weren't counted in in Keep. And so if I saw his dials and he said $399, but Keep told me he made $350, well, I know exactly why. I don't have to go do any digging. It's all there and laid out for me. Now, some averages to shoot for. These are what you want to shoot for. This might not be what you're getting every time, but most of these are pretty attainable. You just really got to work at it. So, cold prospecting. So these are your aspirin campaign. This is your closer look campaign. We would like to see 24% pitched out of all the dials that you make. We want to see 25% of the people you talk to, we want you to pitch, get them into an appointment. And then sit rate, 53% or higher. Guys, I don't like 53% or higher for my team. I want it higher than that. I want them to have nice sticky appointments. I want them to show the value in why we're sitting them. So one of my guys has a 96% sit rate. Christy had, I think she had 76 or 80%. So generally speaking, they're much higher. But again, these are averages to start with and to start shooting for. Now, inbound leads, guys, these are the people who are requesting information from you. These are your clients. So these should be way warmer phone calls. So you should be able to pitch these people 35%. 43 is not uncommon. You should be able to convert 40%, but again, 50% isn't uncommon because these are people who are asking you to give them information. Not that hard of a sell. And then again, sit rate 53% or higher. So, this looks like a whole lot of info. And it's not very clear on there. I'm sorry. So, what this is I have a saved search on Keep. So I can quickly go there and I want to pull David's calls for the month, or I want to pull Christy's calls for the month. This lets me go in, click one button, and you can see all of the calls come up for the month. Now, what I'm looking at here is that he made 1,454 dials for a month. I blocked out all the names. We have the titles. So this is how I'm able to go in and quickly pull calls to listen to. It's all set up. My TurboDial records it, puts it into Keep. I listen to it, good to go. I also have the company name. I have the user, of course, because I have multiple users, I want to make sure that I know what user I'm looking at. And then the campaign name. So what campaign are they calling it? And what phase of that campaign are they calling? So great, you called boot camp. Who did you call in boot camp? We called the people who had some free tickets that we owed. Or we had called some people who are engaged clients. So you're active, you're responding, you're going on webinars, things like that. And then we have the number of call dials. So your call attempt number, is it call 1, call 5? Where are you at in the calling campaign? The date, the seconds that you are on the call, and then the notes. So these are everything that I want to pull every single time I am talking, or every single time I am looking and starting to review. But once I have this saved report from Keep, I have to do something with it. So for me, I extract everything. And you can see there's a whole lot of data in there, and kind of looks like a disaster. This isn't going to tell me that much. Everything I want is in there, but it's still not getting me anything. So I love pivot tables. Yes, I'm a nerd. It's okay. Why I love pivot tables is because I can easily take this and see what all of my team is doing, where are we failing, where are we succeeding. Now, some of this takes some practice because I do know what I'm looking at. But if you see, I have Christy, David, Eric, and Jason. Jason just did some boot camp calls for me, so that's why you don't see anything in the main part. But you can see Christy, this is over a 3-month period. She made 8,803 dials. David made 3,245, and David made 18. Good night, I can't say any names today. Eric made 1,800 dials. So I'm going down and I'm looking at all of this information. I can compare how are they doing against one another. Am I seeing any spikes? Am I seeing anything that doesn't make sense? It's all nice and laid out here. So I take that information and I need to review it. So I take the self-reports and then I take the data I pull from Keep. I need to make sure it's easily manipulated because I want to look at different things at different times. I don't want to have to go back and re-pull. So I make sure that my data is from a trusted source and I can easily maneuver it around. So when I did the results, because one of my team members, Christy, she was having some issues. She wasn't able to book. I knew she had it in her. She had booked before, but I needed to figure out why she wasn't booking anything. So that's why I originally pulled all of that data, because I wanted to try and help her back to the level that I needed her booking at. So this is what I found. So I'm giving you David's comparison to Christy's comparison, okay? Now, they do call different campaigns and things like that, so there is gonna be some differences here. But what I immediately looked at was not interested. So if you see, David has 234 not interested. Christy have 538. She talked to 538 people, and everyone told her not interested. It seemed really odd to me. Now, there's going to be some other things that you might take a peek at here. And this no answer seems like a whole lot too. But because I know our system, I know that all of those no answers are called 3 times before they get removed. So that is going to be high. That's actually only 264 people, 264 unique that didn't answer out of 9,600. That's really not that bad. Same thing with the call dropped. Also seems pretty high, it's 209. But really, those also get 3 phone calls before they're automatically pulled out of the campaign and sent to our cleaners. So really, that's only 69 calls. So I wasn't super worried about those 2 numbers. The one that really got me was the not interested. So, okay, great. Now I know where I have to look, because this is the area that seems like she's failing in. So now I spot check, because I have a targeted focus. I know I need to pull all of her not interested calls and start to listen. I listened to 30, 40 calls, and I found a pattern. I looked at all her notes with those calls. She was pitching gatekeepers. She wasn't getting to the decision makers. She was giving too much information to the gatekeeper, and they were saying, not interested, hanging up on her. She's counting it as not interested, but really, she never talked to anyone. So we just had to back it up, now that we know exactly what's going on. And we do the super fun piece, coaching. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves getting called into my office. I'm sure my staff is watching right now, and they're probably saying nice things about me. So The biggest thing that I do is I bring them in and I tell them what steps I took. Look, Christy, I pulled your calls for 3 months. This is what I found. You're pitching gatekeepers. What's going on? Well, let's have you listen to some calls first. So normally when they listen to calls and they listen to calls with you, most of the time they know what they're doing wrong immediately before you even bother to say anything. And she was the same. She's like, well, they ask what's going on, and so I give them all the information. You don't want to do that. Let's go back to the script. What does your script say to tell them? So we go over different ways to handle it, some different things she could have said, and then we role play. So I have a funny story about program consultant, Rent. So we're having him do phone calls first before he goes to the actual sales position. And he couldn't answer our unique selling proposition. It just wasn't, it was stumbling him, and he just wasn't getting it. So Ray and I got into a phone call with him, a video chat, and we made him role play like 10 times. He's like, he's getting married Saturday. He's like, I'm gonna say this, it's gonna come out in my speech, something's gonna happen. He's like, I had a nightmare, and Ray made me say this at my wedding. And I was like, well, that's great. Just make sure it's Ray's name that you're saying in the middle of the night, not mine. Then we're good. But repetition. Make them do it again and again and again, because it's gonna create that building block. And you wanna make it so that it's automatic. If you ask me what our USP is, I can spout it off, because I've said it 3,000 times and I've memorized it. And then after we do the role play and they're comfortable, they kind of understand what's going on, then I document everything. I take the call or one of the calls and I put it into Basecamp. I put all the notes that we did into Basecamp. I make sure that everything is documented so that if they have this issue again, they can go back and look. Or, if I forget what we coached 2 weeks ago because, I might have a thing or two going on, I can go back and remember exactly what it is that I said to them. And if they're not taking the coaching, then we can move from there. Unfortunately, do some things like write-ups and things like that. Never what I want to do, but a possibility. I am very happy to say that Christy is now booking. She's doing what she needed to do. We don't have any more issues of pitching gatekeepers. She knows what she has to say. She's confident in what she's doing. So it helped her to be able to go through the whole process, to be able to talk to her and tell her exactly why I did what I did, and then able to fix the mistake. And now she's back to booking like a rock star, which is ultimately what we want all of them doing. All right, guys, I know that there's lots of questions. So Ray is going to come around. If you could maybe make your way kind of, if you're not in a seat over this, because I want to be able to get it in the microphone so that all of our virtual people can hear.
Hello. So my question is, what made you guys go with Turbo Dialer as your power dialer and not something like SalesLoft or something like that? Is it just the integration with Keep, or were there other factors?
So there's a few factors here. One of the massive things that it is the integration with Keep. Knowing that I can have different calling campaigns on there, so I know what campaign they're calling and then what disposition they're dialing or what disposition they're leaving. Have all the reports on the back end are all taken care of from those dispositions. And then we have saved searches and things like that, so they can easily click through and make it work for us.
Hey, Missy online, David asked, what are your thoughts on outsourcing appointment setting?
I don't like it. I don't like it because you don't have control over what happens. You don't know if they are giving your USP the way that you would. You don't hear it. They don't have a vested interest. Great, I'm gonna make dials for Joe, and then in 20 minutes, I can make dials for Sam. You know, they're not learning your process. They're not learning everything that has to do with your company. I don't even have people on my team calling before 3 weeks. They're spending time with me. They're spending time with my other appointment setters. They're learning what it is we do and who we are and why we do it the way that we do. And when you have them all together, you can they feed off one another. You know, Eric will be the first one to come running out, I booked an appointment, and try to rub it in Christy's face. Well, you know what? 5 minutes later, Christy's like, so did I. You know, so they feed off one another.
Any tips on hiring our first appointment setter? Like perhaps best places to look for a person? What type of person are we looking for? Training, how long we should train them for? Anything.
All right,
Oh, yes, sorry. Should they be a salesperson, like sales-oriented person, or, you know?
So I have a sales background, not a massive sales background, but I used to do, you know, some student loan calling. I used to hunt you down and ask for money. You know, so I'm not afraid to pick up the phone. I made a joke the other night, I'll call your baby daddy, mama, uncle. Like, I didn't care. If it got me money, I would make the dial. So you need to find somebody who's willing to pick up the phone. I know it seems like common sense, but regardless of whether it looks like a pristine call or it's an off-white or who knows, you're just trying to get some information. They gotta be willing to pick up the phone. I always have them do a script read because, look, people can fake it for a minute, but you don't want somebody who sounds like a dead toad. So I give them a little bit of a script, 15, 20 minutes. Hey, just read this for me. I like people who have some previous call center experience, whether it be inbound or outbound. But look, guys, I'm not gonna lie. Hiring right now is hard. It's really hard. People are not showing up for interviews. They're not returning calls. You get them on and you say, give me something about you. Well, I'm not good at answering questions. Okay, have a great day. Like, really? This is really what you showed up to an interview to say to me? So, persistence. Once you get somebody in and hired, like I said, I have them making phone calls about 3 weeks in. First week, they're just learning about the company. They get to spend an awful lot of time with me. I go over all of our playbooks. Who here has a playbook? This should be everybody. Everybody. We have all of our processes documented out so that I can go through them with them, train them, and then they have something they can take back to their desk and review and start to work with the processes, start to work with all of our stuff. And then start them up slow.
Another virtual, this was asked a couple times, when you say pitched the DM 24%, is that the first call or is that over the course of a campaign?
Over the course of a campaign. So the first time you talk to the person, whether it's on call 1, call 3, doesn't matter. First time you talk to the person.
Hi, I'm curious. These two items, I was curious how you produced them. The self-reporting sheet and the one that said not interested. Like, how did someone create them manually? Were they inside your CRM or something?
So this is all the stuff that I have set up. So the self-reporting, I give my team, which they hate so much, but I give them the sheet. Okay, every day, at the end of the day, you fill this out. You take your tick sheet, you turn it into the self-reporting. This is how you report to me your numbers. The information, let's see here. This one, I made a pivot table from the Keep report. I pulled it from Keep. I turned it into Excel. Now, do you guys know that you can pull things out of Keep and turn them into an Excel sheet? I did that, and then I turned it into a pivot table. It just makes it easier for me to see the way that my brain thinks. I need to see it all laid out. Yeah, absolutely.
How do I get my turbo dial to show all those dispositions?
So his question is, how do I get my turbo dial to show all the dispositions? So again, I had my Keep genius working on that. But if you go on to turbodial.com, it actually shows you how to do that. And I do have this lovely little video that I had made from Scott. So if you want that information, come see me at the booth later, and I'll email it out to you.
And Missy, if you're doing your own appointments, any tips on a self-review of yourself?
Ooh, that's fun. Listen to your calls. You know, listen for all the nuances. Do you hear yourself saying, yeah? Because you might not hear that the first time, but when you listen to it, you can find that out. So I would suggest listening to your calls and have somebody else help you listen. I mean, your husband, your wife, someone who's going to be brutally honest, a child, something. Yeah, you know.
I apologize, I came in a few minutes late, and you may have gone over this. What would be the superstar results that you would expect from a star? You know, number of dials per day, number of conversions. What do you see as your consistent average?
So there's a couple pieces to this. Robin likes 100 dials a day, 100 to 150 dials a day. Eric, for the life of me, I love you, Eric, doesn't make 100 dials a day. But if he books 5 appointments in a day, I don't care that he didn't make 100 dials in a day. Doesn't matter to me. Because he got the results that I wanted, and he didn't burn through a bunch of leads at the same time doing it. So I'm good with that. You know, so it kind of comes and goes. I want to see, you know, an 80% or higher sit rate, and I want to see that person consistently booking 2 or 3 appointments every day. Whoever has the mic next.
I am so impressed that it would be very hard for one of your colleagues to blow smoke in your ear. What incentives do you provide for success, and how do you encourage them to be able to tolerate many times a day being told no?
So guys, ultimately, I mean, what are all salespeople motivated by? We want money, you know? And we set it up so that our appointment setters, they're in charge of how much money they make. Yes, I give them a base salary. But ultimately, you need to book the appointment and you need to set the appointment. I'm not concerned if the appointment sells when we're talking about this. I care that the appointment is there and set up correctly. So every time they do that, I pay them on top of their salary. So we have bonuses and we have a commission structure.
So we used the aspirin campaign through Keep for about 3 months,
Okay.
just finished. And we're just using our marketing assistant administrator as the calling person, which I'm finding is not a very good idea. But so she's following the process, call 1 complete, call 2 complete, call 3 complete, nothing happened. It's off the list, it goes back into Never Never Land. Should she not even check that call 1 unless, a lot of times she's getting the receptionist, some gatekeeper, he's busy, she's busy. So should we not even check that first call off until each call is directed to the person you're looking for?
No, so that's why we keep track of pitched first time, because it could be on dial 1, dial 3, doesn't matter. You've got to make the dials, and then you got to put them back in rinse and repeat. So sometimes running the aspirin campaign for just one time You might not get anything.
Okay,
Rinse and repeat.
so just
Just
another.
keep going.
Okay, over and over.
Yep.
Missy, what do you recommend in terms of what information to provide the gatekeeper?
And I'll answer that one, and then will you come up here to Ms. Lee? She's been waiting a while. So it depends on what you're calling for. But hey, this is Missy with Technology Marketing Toolkit. I'm just following up on a letter that I sent you. You might remember it. It's big and yellow. And so I'm just following up. Is your CEO available? Or whoever, Joe Schmo, are they ready? And if they're asking you, well, what is this about? Well, I'm just following up on the letter I sent them. I just need to talk to them for a couple minutes.
One question. Am I assuming correctly that appointment setters only work with scrubbed lists?
Scrubbed list. Yes,
Clean
my
lists.
appointment setters only have lists that are scrubbed and cleaned. Now, granted, every once in a while, well, a little more than every once in a while, we get opt-ins. So someone goes to our webpage. I'm sure you guys have done it. You may have gotten a phone call from one of my people a couple minutes after you've downloaded something on our site, and they're calling to check up. So those aren't scrubbed. Sometimes they have to go through and maybe check and make sure that the phone number's correct or something like that.
So Missy, do you recommend that these roles of inside salesperson and appointment setter really be separated from outside salesperson, or can they actually be combined? Have you ever seen that done successfully?
I mean, it all depends on what you're looking for. Guys, we have a big company. So the rules for us might not necessarily 100% transfer to the way that you guys have to do it. You might have to play around with it a little bit and kind of see what works for you. Sorry, I don't have a more definitive answer for you on that.
How do you deal with no?
Okay, thank you. But, so you're all set with marketing? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, no, this is what I say to him. So he's asking me, what happens if they say no? I say, okay. So do you have a place already set up, or a plan already set up for your marketing? What happens if you lose your biggest client? Give them some pain points, make them think. Now, not every caller you're gonna be able to say that to, because you might get hung up on, you might be able to tell, no is no. And Robin will tell you, you're not gonna turn a spade into an ace. So there is going to be a lot of no's. It's part of what, the calling.
So we had a hard time finding an appointment setter, so we started talking to a company that does appointment setting. Should we keep going down that route or just stop and keep looking for an appointment setter?
I mean, I would say stop and look for an internal appointment setter. And I know there's somebody that's had his hand up a few times. Yes, over here. Making Ray get his exercise.
Just two quick questions. One is, what are your thoughts on, now everyone working virtually, appointment setters calling from their home, or they have to be in the office?
My appointment setters have to be in the office.
Okay. And the other question that I have is, what are your thoughts on complementing, cold calls with an email that follows up right after the call?
Oh, absolutely. So I have it already set. My team has the dispositions, and the dispositions are tied to emails sometimes. So if they call and there's no answer, an email is going to go out and says, hey, I tried to call you, but no one answered your line. It sometimes gets a response back, or hey, I tried to call and the number was busy. So we have things that automatically go out based on dispositions.
Missy, I didn't understand what you said earlier. So if they call somebody and they don't get past the gatekeeper, do they do call 1, call 2, call 3, or do they keep calling till they get to the person?
So whatever your campaign is set up, if you have 3 calls, then make 3 calls. Our Godfather has 4 calls. So, you know, sometimes you get to that 4th call and the gatekeeper's like, dude, I already told you he's busy. Okay, well, would you just pass along a message for me? Maybe shoot him an email and get him to call me back?
And that's it. So after that 4th attempt,
Then it goes off and it sits in the holding and then it's ready to rinse and repeat for next time.
okay. And what is the time frame that you suggest between the rinse and repeat?
6 months.
Okay. So do you have an idea for, like, if you have a list of 500, like how long it should get, like how long will it take that appointment setter to get through 500 names?
It depends on how many dials you expect your appointment setter to do a day, what your campaign looks like, what your timers look like. So we have call 1 on day 1, call 2 on day 2, and then it skips a day. And then day 4, skips a day, day 6. So it's, you know, it all depends on the timers you have set up. But generally speaking, 150 unique dials or unique prospects are loaded in Godfather every week for every one of my team.
Oh, every week. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
One back here.
Thanks. What do you see as the current compensation that you're offering that's been something that's changed dramatically over the years, and you guys are hiring in-house, so what are you guys seeing in your market as someone that's interested in coming in and working for you long term?
So I'm not sure I understand the competition? Compensation. So generally speaking, what my team is looking for is the ability to move up. So if they start as an appointment setter, they want to know eventually they can move up to something that's compensated more. But again, we compensate on, we give like a dial bonus. So if they make 500 dials every week, the whole month, I'll give them $300. If they do 35 SAT appointments in a month, I give them an additional $800. And that's on top of their actual compensation, like their actual commission structure.
And what is that generally?
The commission structure, so we do it a little bit differently. We have a unit, okay? So a unit is 1 appointment, 1 ticket sold, something along those nature. But I give different points for different levels of appointments. Now, obviously, if it's a hot lead, it's not that hard to book, so I'm gonna give you 1 point. If it's an engaged lead, so they've done some kind of interest, but they haven't like really raised their hand and saying, I want it, then that's 2 points. If it's one of the Godfathers, I give them 5 points, okay? So point system is how they get paid on commission. So from 0 to 21 points, it's 0 money. I'm not giving you anything for that. If you reach 22 to 34, I'll give you 12. If you reach 35 to 43, I'll give you 16. Anything above 43, I'll give you $18 a point.
Missy, from virtual, do you recommend, it says when a campaign is exhausted, does it not go back in for 6 months? Is that generally the rule, or what do you recommend?
So when it comes to the mailing, yes. We even have, you guys know we send out blog reports, things like that. Have any of you ever gotten a call from Eric? Nobody in this room? Okay. So if you get on that list and he calls you and he's done all 4 calls, you come off the list and then you're held for 6 months. If you click on the blog again within the 6 months, then he'll call you again, but not during that 6-month time frame. All right, guys, we got time for 1 more question.
More in here. From virtual, then, we'll go with what's the rule on emailing if you haven't talked to them? If you haven't talked to the decision maker, somebody's sending them an email as a follow-up.
So you got to make sure that you have permission to email. Don't just email. Make sure that you've got permission for it. But once you have permission, hey, I'll send you an email after I just gave you a phone call, left you a voicemail, but maybe this is easier for you to respond to. Let me know. Just Send them a simple email. There's one more behind you.
One more? Oh.
Just to piggyback on that, so if you reach a gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper's like, oh, well, you can just send them an email, that's permission then
That
at
is
that
permission.
point, right? Because I was an SDR for like a year and a half. That is the easiest way to get email from anybody is be like, oh, well, can I shoot them an email? And then you have
Absolutely,
permission.
and then I'm like, oh, and it's John Smith at minute. Oh, no, that's not correct. Oh, can you give me the right one? Nice and simple. Guys, I hope you learned something from this.